And welcome into the Monday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend as we get the week started this week with some rain and some storms moving into the area last night. So hope everybody's okay after that. Joe Rexrode, happy Monday morning to you. What's going on? How we doing?
Yeah, that was my first question I really don't know. I know that we had 4 humans and 2 dogs in a bathroom last night. And, it's always, you always watch those weather forecasts and it's like, here's where the cycle is and it's this street and this street. It's like, oh, those are our streets. Yep, that's okay. So that's a block away. But, but I hope everybody's okay. I know that there was going to be some more stuff that was, I went through Franklin apparently, and I just slept for a few hours and haven't heard anything, but hopefully everybody's all right and we didn't sustain anything serious.
Yep, hope so. I know that I think there was one. I'm watching Fox 17 right now. There's a tornado that touched down last night in McEwen. So that for sure. And then they're kind of going through some other stuff here. So hopefully everybody's okay this morning. It's gross out there this morning as well if you're driving around today. So just make sure you give yourself some extra time. It's a little wet on the roadways as well. We got a lot to get into on the program today. Obviously, we're going to get into Tennessee and their weekend, both the win against Kentucky and then the loss yesterday in the Elite Eight against Houston. We'll get into that. Corey Curtis will join us at 8 o'clock for his weekly visit. Some things going on at the owners' meetings with the Titans that we'll get into as well. And then Max Hers will be with us for a few minutes at 7:30 to look ahead to what he and Chris Mason are going to be doing tomorrow night on the broadcast, an animated broadcast that those guys went and rehearsed last week in New York. They'll be doing it tomorrow for the game as well. So lots to get into on the program today. We'll take your thoughts in the meantime. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Joe, a range of emotions for Tennessee fans this weekend. You start on Friday in a massive game in the Sweet 16, and Tennessee pretty much handles Kentucky from start to finish in that game. They looked really good. They dominated Kentucky. We talked all week last week, Joe, about how difficult it is to beat a team 3 times. Kentucky not able to pull that off. So you've got the jubilation on Friday night, Joe, of what was, I think, as we discussed on Friday, pretty clearly, probably the biggest win in school history as it relates to the men's basketball front. And then you follow it up yesterday, Joe, with a chance to finally break down the door and to get to the Final Four. And you just come out with a dud against Houston. They win 69-50. You scored 15 points in the first half, which is not good. And here we are again talking about Tennessee being eliminated, Joe, in the Elite Eight. So I'll let you kind of pick it up from there. What did you make of kind of the extreme of both ends for Tennessee's weekend here in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, just nightmare first half yesterday after kind of a dream whole game against Kentucky. It was just it was quickly in that Kentucky game. There was just little doubt, who was the better team and who was going to win. Kentucky made a couple little runs and tried to get it inside double figures. They made a little run, and then Tennessee gets the 5 straight, the steal and the Ziegler 3, and it just over. And so, that was obviously very gratifying for Tennessee fans and the opposite of gratifying for Kentucky fans. And then, just yesterday, it's funny, the Elite Eight, you had a 1 versus a 2, 1 versus a 2, 1 versus a 2, and 1 versus a 3. And I don't know if it's worse, Tennessee, Alabama, Michigan State all came out and really just played crappy games. The opponents deserve credit for sure, but all 3 of them really just kind of laid eggs. I don't know if it's worse to do that or be Texas Tech and basically have it 1 against Florida and completely blow it, which is what happened Saturday night. But it's combination of things. One is Houston is just the difference between Houston and Tennessee, you're talking about, again, maybe the 2 best defensive teams in the country. But the difference is one of them is way bigger and stronger than the other, and that you saw that. They're just taller everywhere or stronger everywhere. And then I did think the Vols in the first half yesterday had several shots that you'll take. Like, you'll take those shots. It wasn't like it was just complete lockdown where they couldn't even get a look at the basket, and they've got shot clock violations every other possession. I think sometimes you get into, you can't get in the lane. You can't really get anything going inside out at all. And then I think they started to get to where it's like the first okay shot they were taking. That whole, the coaches talk about all the time. Go one side or the other, make the defense at least move a little bit. You might find a little bit of a seam or at least a little bit more open shot. And they started, I think, panicking a little bit, settling a little bit. Loved the fight in the second half, and they got it to, did they get it to 9? They got to 10 for sure. They had a couple chances in the second half to push him, but then Houston always answered with a shot or some kind of a play. I mean, Houston's really freaking good. So it's unfortunate for the Vols. I think you see yesterday the flaw in the team, which to me is like you lose Adu and Awaka, and Milicic and Okpara as replacements were good. But like in this game, you see where it's just not good enough. It's the front court just wasn't good enough, and it's not Rick Barnes' fault that JP Estrella got hurt this year, but another burly guy,
Yep.
like in yesterday's game, like a Waka would have been so huge in yesterday's game. Just someone who could like battle with somebody inside and root out some space and maybe get you a bucket inside.
Well, the bottom line is when you score 15 points in the first half, you're going to have a tough time winning. I mean, it's one of those things where you appreciate the fight, and Rick Barnes talked about that after the game yesterday, and I think Tennessee deserves credit for that. But when you score 15 in the first half, you just don't give yourself a shot. I mean, it's almost impossible to come back and win when the offensive output is that low in the first half. And I saw some Tennessee fans talking yesterday about how the moment was too big for them, and you could see that they were just kind of choking it away out there in the first half. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the quote unquote mental approach was for them yesterday. I tend to probably be more with you, where I looked at Houston. I was like, good Lord, these guys are freakishly big. They can all move, and they're a really good defensive team. And the bottom line is, like, when you look at most metrics, Joe, the best 4 teams in the country are now the best 4 teams remaining, and Tennessee's just on kind of the outside looking in at those 4.
Just outside. Yeah. 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 I don't think it was, I don't think it was like the moment of the Elite Eight at all. I think Houston made it worse. Now maybe it's like Houston, and then it's like, oh my God, and this game is so big. Eventually, again, you just get outside of yourself a little bit. But whatever it was, yeah, they didn't play well, and then they had some shots that they didn't hit. And 15 points, like you said, no number 1 or number 2 seed has ever scored that few in the first half of a game of the tournament in any round. I mean, that's just it's just a brutal half. So again, look, they're not as good as Houston, and for anybody who follows Ken Pom, who's been doing his thing since Ken Pomeroy, 1996-97, which is something the selection committee uses, and it's basically efficiency rankings. So the 4 teams in the Final Four are 4 of the top 10 most efficient teams of all time being in his, since he's been doing it since 96-97.
That's pretty wild.
It is wild. So, you could say that this is the most loaded Final Four ever because of that. And yeah, these 2 seeds, Tennessee, Michigan State, Bama, Texas Tech wasn't a 2. St. John's was the only 2 that really stunk it up and didn't get anywhere in this tournament. But they're a little bit not as good as the ones. I think it's just disappointing that I still think they're close enough that those should have been better games, including Tennessee's.
Yeah, and then that's sometimes the beauty and the curse of the tournament here. And look, as time goes on, you can continue to unpack, and we're going to do that as the show goes on today, the season as a whole and what this thing actually means for Tennessee basketball. But it is amazing how in this tournament you can go from just such a good performance and a good feeling about yourself, the way you're playing, the way things are trending for you on Friday, and then the first half of a game on Sunday, it just completely turns around. I mean, look, go look at Alabama, right? Like, Alabama couldn't miss a shot against BYU. And then you looked in the first half against Duke and you're down double digits and you don't know what happened to you. Like you're staggered at that point, and by the time you recover from it, it's too late. And Alabama really never recovered from it. I mean, Tennessee got back in it a little bit into the second half, but like I said, when you score 15 points in the first half, you give yourself no shot in the second half.
Yeah, and there's a common thread there. Well, actually, I mean, you think about like Zakai Ziegler, 18 points, 10 assists against Kentucky, totally has the game on a string. Mark Sears, 10 threes, 34 points against BYU. And then Duke, Houston, longer, taller everywhere, played great. And both of them just got taken out of their games or just weren't effective at all. I mean, Mark Sears couldn't get anything going. Um, Duke just bullied him in that game. And, he had a few threes, and you're not going to hit he's basically pulling up for 25 footers. If you're not going to hit those, it's going to be a long night. And then again, Ziegler yesterday just couldn't get, whenever he did get some room, there's a big, tall guy waiting. They are an amoeba of a defense. So, yeah, like starting with those point guards, incredible performances in Sweet 16, and then real big disappointments in their final games in the Elite Eights.
So Tennessee goes down in the Elite Eight to Houston yesterday. We'll take your thoughts on that game, and we'll unpack what all this means for Rick Barnes and this Tennessee basketball program here. Take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025. More coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Robby and Rexrode broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Tennessee gets the big win Friday against Kentucky, only to have it all come crashing down yesterday in the Elite Eight against Houston. They lose 69-50 to Houston yesterday, and we got a bunch of one seeds in the Final Four, which we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. So now, as we sit here and kind of unpack all this, Joe, what does it all mean for this Tennessee basketball program, for Rick Barnes and the future of this team moving forward? Obviously, this has been the Zakai Ziegler era, and they've wanted to punch down the door and get him to the Final Four, and they came up just a little bit short in this tournament run. The discourse began immediately online yesterday, Joe, among Vol Twitter, some of which very frustrated of Rick Barnes can never win the big one, or this is if this team could get to the Final Four, this program will never get to the Final Four. Lots of frustration in the aftermath of the loss yesterday, and then some other discourse as the day went on of winning big for this program is exactly what they've been doing. So leave things alone and be quiet. A lot of back and forth on that on Vol Twitter. So, Joe, as we get to kind of sift through the end of this here, and you have the sour taste in your mouth if you're a Tennessee fan based on the way that game went yesterday. How do you begin to unpack the accomplishment of the run here, and then what this could mean for the future of this program? Now, obviously, with some changes coming on the personnel front next year.
Yeah. Well, first of all, on the point about like this team, I thought just because of the situation, that they had a better chance. The situation being not playing Zach Edey, playing obviously a great team in Houston, but not a team playing a home game. It really was more of a Vols home game yesterday. So I thought that it lined up for Tennessee, and I said that Friday. I said I think this is going to be the year. But the idea that if this team can, last year's team was better than this year's team, guys. That's absolutely not just because Dalton Connect was on last year's team. They also had, and I know Vescovy didn't shoot well last year and all that, but he still was like a good player, good defensive player. Josiah James was a good player. And again, Jonas Adu, you could throw the ball in and get a bucket. Toby Awaka would come in and uproot somebody. He was one of the best offensive rebounders in all of college basketball last year. Again, Akpara is a good replacement, and he did some good things. He could protect the rim. He could put your lobs down, but you can't throw the ball into the guy. Milicic, just, physicality with him, as we saw. It's just in certain matchups, he just didn't have that. So, like, last year's team was flat out better than this year's team. So, and I guess I would say probably last year's team was probably the best Barnes team, probably since the Grant Williams team, they had the Kennedy Chandler team too that lost to Michigan with Ziegler as a freshman, which certainly was talented, but this was not Rick Barnes' best team. So then you get into, okay, so but where does it go now? Look, Tennessee, and this is where it gets interesting with these SEC schools, Tennessee included. If Rick was pretty adamant this last weekend, he made one comment about how he's going to miss Ziegler, and people took that as him retiring, but he is 70 years old. It's a natural thing to talk about, right?
Sure.
But he's pretty adamant, that he's coming back, which, again, if you're a Tennessee fan, Tennessee basketball fan, you should be happy with that. But hey, you do you, if you want to move on and you're sick of only getting to, the second and third Elite Eights in school history.
Those darn Elite Eights.
Yeah. Then, that's your right to complain. But it does get interesting with, obviously this is now, Meshack too, Ziegler and Meshack, those are central, just fantastic players. They're both up for National Defensive Player of the Year. And, Ziegler leaves as like the all-time assist leader in the SEC. These are huge losses, Lanier. You are rebuilding a team. Gainey, you're rebuilding a team. So I think Tennessee is going to be well-funded, but we are having revenue sharing now next year. So now what's most important? You said it yourself. Hey, man, get that money to the football team, yeah, right? You cannot cut any corners with the football team. So I'm interested in that perspective.
Yep.
If you're Rick Barnes looking at it like, Okay, so is it going to be harder to get into the portal and get people? I do know Chaz Lanier, BYU, I've been told, offered him considerably more than Tennessee did. But you got, the opportunity to be developed by Rick Barnes, the opportunity to learn how to play defense by Tennessee and give yourself a better chance at the NBA. And even the opportunity to go to a place where football is usually, Tennessee has things in its favor where it doesn't always have to just outbid people to get players. But that's a big part of it. Is Rick Barnes is known as probably as good a developer of players. Look at what Dalton Connect. He came in here. Yeah, he was great, but also, again, learn how to play D. You got to do this in the NBA. And so if Rick Barnes is here, I think they're going to be able to recruit / get really good players out of the portal. But it is a huge rebuild in this moment right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big question here is, as soon as next season, how much can you reload? Like, there's some huge losses that they're going to have with this year's group that you're going to have to go out there and try to find a way to replenish. So can you do that effectively enough where you're back in a similar spot next year with a chance to eventually break down the door? Now, look, I'm totally with you on the Tennessee basketball front. Like, we've talked about this, and I don't think there's a ton of Tennessee fans that feel this way. I do think there are some loud Tennessee fans that feel this way of, well, Rick Barnes just isn't good enough. Like, it's not he's not cutting it, and we want better. It's like, well, that's great. You can want better. I don't know who that is at the current moment. And we've talked about, it would be a shame if you got all the way through the Rick Barnes era, whenever that ends, whether it's, now or next season or 5 years from now. I have no idea. But if you get through that entire time and you never get to the Final Four, based on the regular season success that they've had and the postseason success, right? Like, they've won SEC tournaments. They've gotten to some Elite Eights. This has been clearly the best run in Tennessee men's basketball history. It would be a shame if you got through the end of that and you never got a Final Four to show for it. Are they going to get there at some point? I don't know. Like, it's a really difficult thing to do, obviously. They have been knocking on the door, and they've not been able to break that part of it down. So I understand, like, if you're a Tennessee fan and it's frustrated by that. Well, what I continue to not understand is the lack of perspective on this job, what it's been, and potentially what it could still be after Rick Barnes is done. Now, I think Rick Barnes has elevated it, and I think there's been enough long-term winning here now under him and his watch with this program that it probably has transformed the profile of this program and the attractiveness of it whenever that next stop comes from whoever that's going to be after Rick Barnes. But I do think that the lack of perspective on what this program has been basically since before he got here, like, you had the great run with Pearl, and that's, you've had a couple of runs at different points in your basketball history, but there's, I still think, continuing to be a lack of perspective on what he's done.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing about Rick Barnes, obviously, when he came to Tennessee, he had all these incredible teams at Texas. He had so many of them that underperformed, relative like to their seeding the NCAA tournament and stuff. He only got to the one Final Four, at Texas. He had a tremendous run of like regular season championships and great players and all that stuff. I mean, again, like the last 3 years, you're talking about 3 straight Sweet 16s. You're talking about 2 straight Elite Eights. I mean, the underperforming your seed was a thing with Rick Barnes. Well, that hasn't happened. And you think about the Sweet Six. So you have the 2 straight Elite Eights. Again, you lost as the 2 to the 1. That's performing to your seed level. But also, like, it's hard to perform to your seed level and get that far in a tournament. And then you have the Sweet 16 2 years ago where you beat Duke and you didn't have Zakai Ziegler in that tournament, and look, that was also disappointing. That Tennessee was up with a pretty good lead on Florida Atlantic and blew that, but you didn't have Ziegler, and I guess we've figured out Florida Atlantic was a decent team. So Rick Barnes really has like done a lot to change, the narrative, I guess, on him with tournament performance. But I get it. It's like, okay, but what about the Final Four? Can you get to a Final Four? And now, I mean, it's just it's players that TBD, and that's where it's like in college hoops, it used to be okay with this recruiting class and that recruiting class. This guy's ready, that guy's ready. He's had some really promising young players that have left recently because they weren't getting time this year, which is too bad. And so you really have to. I mean, they could go nuts in the portal and have a great team next year. This is certainly possible. I think like JP Estrella is going to be a good player. They got some guys, that are coming up that are going to, I think, be there and be good, but they have a lot of work to do. And does Rick Barnes, how long does he want to do it? I mean, that's a big question. I'm not closing the door on the idea that, he looks around, says, man, Zakai and Jemai are out of here, and it's just, do I really want to get into this? And now we have to deal with the revenue sharing, and so now it's like fighting more for resources. I'm not closing the door on the idea that at some point this offseason he might look around and say, okay, I think this is the right time.
615-737-1025, our phone number. More your thoughts on Rick Barnes and Tennessee's loss in the Elite Eight yesterday, how to unpack it moving forward, and what to make of where they go from here. We'll continue to take your thoughts on that. We've got some updates from the NFL owners meetings to get to later this hour as well. Lots coming up on Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning, taking your thoughts on the Vols. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Trevor from Waverly, Joe, says Tennessee should hang on to Barnes as long as he'll stay. Don't be like the Titans and run your coach out of town. We see how that's going. This from Trevor from Waverly.
Well,
don't be like the
Amy
Titans
Adams
should be a bumper sticker.
If Amy Adams Strunk were the Vols AD, how fired would Rick Barnes have been in like 2020?
Rick, it's time for you to go. You're too nice. We got to get some jerk in here now. Thank you.
She would have fired Rick in 2020 for having no NCAA tournament wins in the 2020 NCAA tournament,
which didn't exist.
Right.
Good stuff. Dustin from Hopkinsville says Tennessee, Rick Barnes is going to rebuild the team. It'll surprise all Tennessee fans. He's a great coach, and as a Kentucky fan, I'm rooting that he gets a good team to compete with Kentucky every year. Love the rivalry. How about that perspective from Dustin from Hopkinsville today? A little bit of respect thrown Rick Barnes' way.
You know that is nice. Now let's see. What else has Dustin said today? He says, LOL, nothing better than leaving the show Friday, no show for the weekend. You beat us, then turn around and still 0 Final Fours. You thought, well, in all caps.
some respect.
Dustin has a lot of thoughts, including that Kentucky just gave the game to Tennessee. I mean, he said UK played their worst game, period. Yes, UK didn't play a good game. Tennessee completely annihilated their defense. And again, I'm giving Houston credit too yesterday. Houston blew Tennessee up. So then all of a sudden you start missing some shots that you hope that, that they look like shots that you normally make, and you miss them. Why? There is a correlation between getting absolutely bullied and having your stuff messed up that you like to run, and then all of a sudden you kind of put up quick shots and miss them. And Kentucky's offense against Tennessee Friday for stretches looked a lot like Tennessee's offense yesterday against Houston. And in both cases, you have to look at the opponent and say, yeah, they did some stuff to really mess them up.
One thing, if you're a Tennessee fan, that I think is going to be fair to wonder, and I don't know what the answer to this is, it was this year's shot, and you could probably put the last 2 years together. Were those the best shots that they're going to have at the Final Four under Rick Barnes? I don't know. As you mentioned, there's a lot of work to do for Tennessee for next year's team. Like it's hard to sit here today on March 31st, Joe, with the losses that we know that they're going to have and predict that they're going to be anywhere near as good next year. Now, again, it's hard to predict that because you have no idea how many people they're bringing in. Like, what's the portal going to look like? Do they get some freshmen that come in and play really, really well? And I don't know. Like, it's going to be so they could come in and be better than next year, depending on what they do this offseason. It's just hard to predict, as we sit here today, exactly where that's going to go. So if you are a Tennessee fan that has enjoyed this run of success in basketball under Rick Barnes, and you're asking the question of, well, these last two teams have been really darn good, and they've been right on the edge of getting to the Final Four and haven't been able to break it down. Are we ever going to have a better shot than you just had these past 2 years? That, Joe, I think is a fair question to ask as they move forward here.
Definitely. Yeah, I can't sit here and say, I promise you it'll be better. Look, there's everybody talks about, NIL in the portal and stuff. So you have to have the resources. I mean, I think Tennessee will. But again, this is going to be the story here moving forward with revenue sharing is, there are leagues in power leagues in basketball that are not power leagues in football. Like the Big East does not care about football. The Big East now is a pure basketball conference. So, some of these programs, I mean, you look what BYU is doing. They got the number one recruit in the country coming in next year. And again, I just said they were hard after Chaz Lanier. They are out there spending. Okay. And there's some places out there that are not going to have to worry about football. Now they're not going to have the football money, but again, the $20.5 million of revenue sharing, they're going to have that. And then most of it's going to go to basketball. So how does that look for SEC teams? Is this the peak of the SEC, which by the way, give the SEC its flowers. It is backed it up every round here. And, the best conference ever in the regular season is, sitting here and has done the work in the tournament. Now, I suppose you got to win it all to really close that up, right? But this could be the peak of the SEC. I can't tell you that Rick Barnes is going to have great teams. It's not just about the resources. It's about choices. Incredible choice with Dalton Connect.
Yeah.
The day they got Dalton Connect, did we even talk about it on the show? Probably
No.
not. I mean, like, okay, it's like, hey, good player for Northern Colorado. We'll see. And he turns out to be just amazing. So can they continue to evaluate like that and find the right guys? I mean, Chaz Lanier ended up being a heck of a pickup. He was terrific this year. So can they do that at a high level? Because I do think that, again, the front court is where this team, just took a step backward. And it's too bad, with Adu, a couple things. First of all, my understanding is, again, Arkansas, that Tyson Chicken money, like they went after him hard. And by the way, Arkansas doesn't make anywhere near the run they did if not for him. He was fantastic. But you look at that too, and you think, what if Tennessee had that? Again, a guy who can go get you a bucket in there, and that's where, so that's where they didn't do well enough. And so now you have so many holes to fill. But it's just like the culture guys that go back to Josiah, Vescovy, and really Josiah kind of took even the baton from Grant Williams. He helped recruit him there. You kind of are starting over with that stuff. And so that's not a comforting thought.
It's not. But having said that, what you just brought up, I think does give you reason for optimism, right? Because they did go find Dalton Connect and they did bring in Chaz Lanier, and they've got a process here in the portal that has worked. So it doesn't guarantee that it's going to work every year, but they're on a pretty nice run now of bringing in impactful players out of the portal. They're going to have to do it again next year, and then we'll see kind of where things stand after that. But we've talked so much about the talent that they're losing. They have demonstrated an ability to go identify people, bring them in, and to have them pretty seamlessly fit into the way they do things here. So, like, I still think, like, if Rick Barnes is staying and he's gonna be hanging around here, which it seems like he is, then the track record is what the track record is. Like, he's gotten this thing to a point where I think that they're going to put together a team that's going to be pretty good, and they're going to have a good amount of success in the regular season. And then come tournament time, I guess the old theory is, Joe, if you knock on the door long enough, eventually you'll break it down. I know some Tennessee fans say that that's great. That's probably not going to happen, and don't operate that way. That's the theory you go by. And the track record tells me that, based on the track record that he's got with the portal there, they're probably going to find one or two guys that come in and are really impactful for him next year.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got a terrific staff, and that's the thing. There's standards and expectations in that program that are that have been consistent, and they're not going to change. And so, no, they're going to be good. And then you get into, I mean, to me, I don't know exactly who it is, but at some point, you do have to think about what's next. If I'm a Tennessee fan, yeah, I mean, I understand the allure of, you should look around, you should open up the search. Who knows who you could get out there. I think this job has, like you said, Robby, it's a much more attractive job. But also, I think someone from his tree should be an attractive option if you can find the right one, because you want this style of basketball. It works. I understand no Final Fours, but you can't tell me that, again, it's crazy because, again, last year, like, it was a much, to me, tougher game, and they were right there to win it. And then yesterday they weren't. So disappointing. But yeah, I do believe in that theory of knocking on the door. I mean, you can do what they've done in the tournament, you can win another game. And so, to me, I think Tennessee fans should want that. I got someone in the text that says, as a Georgia fan, we'll gladly take Rick off y'all's hands. We'll give you Mike White for free. Well, then Danny would coach his brother.
Nice family
Scott,
reunion.
Yeah, Scotty from Dixon says it doesn't matter who your coach is. You shoot 1 for 15 and threes the first half. High chance you're going to lose. Mike says Rick Barnes sucks. He can only get them so close. They've only ever been so close. Yes, Mike, but again,
I knew we'd get one.
They've been to three Elite Eights in their history. That's the farthest they've ever gone. Rick Barnes just created 2 of those 3 in the last 2 years. So I mean, again, you can have perspective or not.
I mean, Tennessee fans have already they've already crafted who's going to be Barnes' replacement, Joe, when that time comes.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to be Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl's coming back home.
Is that really
That's
what
Vol
people
Twitter says? Yeah.
Well, good for Bruce Pearl, by the way. Bruce Pearl is his second Final Four with Auburn. So, good for him. Good coach. I don't think that's going to happen. Bruce Pearl's plan is he is going to coach to a certain point. He is going to retire, and Stephen Pearl is going to take over that program. That's his plan. I don't know if Auburn's plan is that, but that's his plan.
Bruce Pearl, 65, 5 years younger than Rick Barnes. So you could just pick up right where you left off, Joe. Maybe build on it. We'll see.
Sure. There you go.
Just asphalt.
Good
Twitter.
luck with that.
That's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
Coming home, 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We will get back into Tennessee and their loss in the Elite Eight yesterday, a little bit later coming up in the program. Some interesting comments coming out of the Titans brass from the owners meeting down in Florida. We'll get into some of those as it relates to the number one pick coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe, it is the NFL owners meetings down in Palm Beach, Florida, the site of, I believe, last year where PK made up with Tom Pelissero in the breakfast line down there. So hopefully he's doing some reparation of relationships down there as well. Who knows? Maybe Jordan Schultz is down there. I don't know. Could be a PK and Jordan Schultz time down there, Joe.
Look, Jordan Schultz, he's all over the place. How could he not be at the owners' meeting?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Hopefully,
and if he's there, how could he not at least physically threaten Kuharsky?
Also a good question.
If not actually act on it. I mean, it would be a big surprise.
It would be. It would be. So PK's come out with a couple of different things so far at the owners' meetings that have been pretty interesting. We're going to touch on some of those today on the program. Starting yesterday, he put this piece out there, catching up with Borgonzi and Brian Callahan and Brinker and going over Cam Ward and the number one pick. And some interesting comments from Borgonzi and Callahan specifically here, Joe, that I want to get your thoughts on. It's, the idea of if you really love the quarterback, like if you love Cam Ward at number one, are you really going to be listening that intently to other offers that are thrown your way? And this was the quote that Borgonzi had. Quote, I was taught over the years, if you find the quarterback that you want and you think he's a franchise quarterback, then you're not going to pass on him. Brian Callahan added to that, says, quote, I think anytime you can find a quarterback that can lift your football team and that you feel is the caliber of player you're talking about, those guys are worth more. There is really no price on those guys. So he was asked, Kuharsky put this out there, says, quote, so it's entirely possible Borgonzi's phone rings as the draft approaches or on Thursday, April 24th, and the Titans are not open for business. And Borgonzi's response to that was, yes, that is possible. So, Joe, with all that in the backdrop, that kind of lines up with the way that I viewed it. Like, to me, if they actually do love Cam Ward as much as it seems like they do, then there's really not a price that makes a lot of sense for me if I'm the Titans. I keep hearing people throwing out there, well, they really, really like him. They love him. They want him to be their guy. But if you approach him with an offer that's good enough, they'll move off that. That has never made any sense to me. Like, if you love the quarterback, then you take the quarterback. That's how I think good teams operate there. Then the question becomes, Joe, do they actually love the quarterback? And that's what we're going to find out over the coming weeks here. But I thought some interesting stuff there from Borgonzi and Callahan specifically on that front, courtesy of PaulKuharsky.com.
Yeah, it's interesting. But again, if you want to believe as a Titans fan that they still would listen, then you can look at that and say, there you go, they're playing the game perfectly. That's how you play the game. That's what you say. You say stuff like that publicly, and you put some doubt in those other teams, and you hope that they're like, God, they really are going to take him. We got to have them. I mean, I think at some point, I think you have to take this for what it is, but you could still talk yourself into that. You can always talk yourself into the NFL draft. Anything that's said on the record that it's the opposite is true if you want, I will say beyond that though, Robby, the Rappaport and Schefter both at different times, sending out it's not done. They are still listening. Yep. That is weird, right? Like, because I don't think either of those guys would do that because an agent told them that, right? It doesn't make any sense.
I don't think so.
If you're going to tweet, I guess anything's possible. But if you're going to tweet that out, to me, that means someone inside the building told you that and wants that out there. That's what those guys do. They do the bidding of the people and the teams and the agents that they deal with, and they put stuff out that all those people want out there. So that's what kind of doesn't line up, and I guess just keeps the door cracked a little bit for me on this. But yeah, I mean, everything is pretty overwhelmingly pointing to them taking Cam Ward. It's just I like you said, if you love quarterback and take him, that's what good teams do. Yeah, but again, it's like if it's really that good of a quarterback,
Right.
which is also
Which, by
a
the way,
question.
yeah,
But
obviously
we'll
they
see.
never really said that in this piece. Like they're not going to get into Cam Ward specifically and like their innermost thoughts on him
Right.
sitting down with Kuharski. But I just thought the way that they kind of phrased that was interesting. And then you throw the question out there of, okay, well, is Cam Ward, do they view Cam Ward as that type of guy? Now, it's interesting. Brian Callahan is speaking right now down at the owners' meetings, and we're going to have some audio coming up in the next segment from what he said down there. But the headline of it is, and TD just put this tweet out there, that Callahan says he feels like the Titans are maybe 2 weeks away from making their decision on what they're going to do with the first pick. We'll get specifically into the audio from Callahan coming up next segment. But then if you're a Titans fan, Joe, and you're listening to that and you're saying, well, at this point, you've met with Cam Ward at the combine, you've gone to his pro day, you've had the private workout with him, and I mean that part of it is done. Like you're not going to be around Cam Ward again before the draft coming up. So if you're 2 weeks away from making your decision, does that show you that you've not really made your decision on Cam Ward at that front? Because I don't think you're getting any new information on him at this point, I guess is the overarching point there.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting new information this week on Shedeur Sanders.
Yep.
By the way. So that'll be really interesting this week, how that goes, how that looks, what is said all around the Shedeur stuff this week. The Titans are doing their homework on him. So, and, look, if you do believe that there's something that could pry them away from Cam Ward or the number one pick, which we assume is Cam Ward, then if it was one of those teams right behind him, would they take that extra draft capital and take Shedeur?
Could be.
What do you think about that one?
It could be the strategy.
I don't know. I could, or at least it could be like the pivot.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you hit this mark of an insane offer, and then we can still get Shedeur, who we actually have rated right there with Cam Ward. I mean, I don't know. The NFL media has determined that Cam Ward is clearly the best quarterback, and that there's a gap. I mean, again, Charles Robinson says on our show, there's a gap. But, these teams do their own individual rankings that are independent of what everybody else talks about before a draft.
Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome Jared to the program. Jared, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, fellas. Hope y'all are all right from that weather last night as far as everybody else listening.
Yes, sir. Same to you.
Yes, sir. Also, we had the best draft board guy last year, and that was Rand. He had Michael Penix pegged at number 8 like nobody else. But, I don't know what this spells this year, unfortunately, fellas. But, if we look at this on paper with Cam Ward, if we were to take him, which I think we do, he's the lowest rated player ever to be taken that high. And to me, if it's just on paper, like there has to be something that you can take with this paper and produce something with it outside of potential and leadership. And if they do all this, I'm just going to be down on them for a while until I get proven wrong, because I just don't necessarily trust. I'm not saying the evaluation of just the Titans, but I don't really trust Cam Ward and any of these other quarterbacks to be taken that high. And as a fan, I don't know. There's just a lot going on, but just looking at this on paper, fellas, I just don't necessarily feel that confident about the pick. And if we do it, then it makes me trust these guys even less, that we're so locked in on this guy too. And I get the game and all the stuff that goes along with it, but I just don't also trust these Titans to know, or the brass to know how to play the game, to be honest. So anyway, so I hope you have a great day. Keep stirring it up. Tighten up.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. Sound like a little defeated Jared from Spring Hill there. That was a half-hearted tighten up at the end of that, Joe.
Tighten up, I guess.
We'll get into some comments from Brian Callahan from the owners' meetings this morning, coming next as it relates to the number 1 overall pick. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. The NFL owners meetings going on down in Florida. Brian Callahan meeting with the media this morning, and we're going to get to some of those comments here in just a second. Joe, by the way, did you see the annual coaches photo that came out from the owners meetings down there with Brian Callahan sitting on the front row and Vrabel directly behind him with a little bit of a grin on his face? It's pretty funny.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. I remember last year Vrabel had – wait, was Vrabel – well, Vrabel wouldn't have been in it last year.
No, but 2 years ago.
So I guess it was 2 years ago. Vrabel had some goofy stuff going on too. He's real photogenic, that Vrabel.
They placed him right behind Callahan. It's
that's
pretty
really
funny.
cute.
Callahan's not really looking at the camera either, which is also funny. So
why are you holding your hands like that?
Maybe that's what he was asking. I don't know. Speaking of Brian
Callahan's looking away. I have to check this out now.
Speaking of Brian Callahan, he is down answering questions, I believe, as we speak at the owners' meetings, and was asked about the number 1 overall pick and when a decision could be coming on that front. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say just a few minutes ago.
I think we're closer. I think we have another touch point with the 2 players in Colorado with their pro day and a private workout with them. And then I would say probably we're about two weeks away-ish probably from being pretty dang close to what we want to do. But we'll still work through it. I think the one thing that's been impressive about Mike is very disciplined in his approach and his process, and I've appreciated that. And I think that he's going to go through every possible turn before we get to that point.
So that was Brian Callahan. Says they're about a couple weeks away from maybe really nailing down what they want to do. They still have a couple of touch points in Colorado, obviously referring to Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders there as they go through their process here. But Joe kind of connecting the dots from that and what we talked about in the last segment with some of their comments on paulkuharski.com, where if you love a quarterback, there's really not an offer that makes a ton of sense. If you love the quarterback, you just take the quarterback at that point. You know, interesting, as Callahan points out there, one thing that Borgonzi's been very consistent about since he took the job was he has talked about how diligent they're going to be with the number 1 overall pick and going over every possible scenario, turning over every rock, and it certainly seems like that's what they're doing heading up to all this.
Yeah, that's good. You definitely want to do that. We'd all, it'd be easier if we all had an answer. Texter says, my question is, if they actually love Ward, why haven't they come out and just said it? They have the number 1 pick. There's no need for them to be mysterious about it. But again, I mean, look, again, like that happens in those years where everybody knows who the number 1 pick's going to be. And basically everybody's like, man, what a great year to have the number 1 pick, because you're going to get Joe Burrow. You're going to get Caleb Williams. Well, that's obviously not this year, right? So at this point, what's the benefit of doing that? What's the benefit? I mean, it'd be great. We'd all have clarity. Although I don't know if it'd be great for our show, because we've gotten a lot of mileage out of like speculating what they're thinking. Yeah.
Wouldn't be great for the TV show either on the like people laugh about that. The NFL does not want the Titans coming out and saying, yeah, we're taking Cam Ward.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, in some years, like, again, last year, they would have loved maybe for intrigue. There was no intrigue because it was who he was, right? So it's like, okay, well, that's what it is. Whatever. Everybody knew the Bears were taking Caleb. And I don't remember publicly when that was like confirmed, but there was no intrigue. This year there is, and the reason is because the guy we're talking about is not a prospect of that caliber. Again, a prospect in terms of just the pre-draft evaluation. So you're just going to have to wait. But yeah, the disciplined approach that Callahan talked about there, I expect him to say, it's unlike Rand who slept on the plane. Rand slept on the plane, and
Candy Crush.
Mike's got a lot of discipline, a lot of great ideas.
A lot of great ideas to throw around out there. Last year's draft didn't really start till pick number 3. That's how it goes sometimes, right? Like you knew Caleb Williams was going number 1. You knew Jaden Daniels was going pick number 2. And sometimes that's just the way it shakes out. That's not really the case in this year's draft. And to that point, Callahan was asked a few minutes ago about whether or not there's a leader in the clubhouse for the number 1 overall pick. Here was Brian Callahan's response to that.
Yeah, I think it's maybe I would be wrong to say there's a leader in the clubhouse at this point. We're still going through all of the process, and we got meetings coming up still that we have to finish. When it comes to the Colorado players, both Travis and Shador, their pro day and then their private workout. So we're just looking for those guys to perform, and that's all we're looking for. There's nothing that they need to do or not do. We want them to just perform as best they can, and we'll do our evaluation part of it.
So that was Brian Callahan. Interesting choice of words there, Joe, because he didn't say that there wasn't a leader in the clubhouse. He said it would be wrong for him to say that there's a leader in the clubhouse, which I think are two very different things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So worth a shot with that question, but that was a very nice little sidestep there by Brian Callahan. So the video, so the quotes, who are we crediting for these
So
quotes?
Jim Wyatt had that last one. Teron Davenport had the first one. So a healthy Titans media contingent down at the owners' meetings. Keezer has actually sent a picture that I believe came from Brian McCarthy at NFL PR guy on Twitter. There's an unbelievable amount of people at these owners' meetings. It's crazy. Like this entire room is basically people are shoulder to shoulder.
Man, I hope they got enough eggs. You know, PK and Pelissero want to have their little poached egg biscuits together. Yeah. So for the Titans, then obviously Jimmy, you know, with the Titans, you got TD, PK. I assume Nick Suss from the Tennessean there would be.
I think Andrew's down there.
Oh, Andrew's down there too.
Andrew's
okay.
down there too.
Okay, there we go. Well, that's a pretty good contingent. Yeah. Now that picture is like I mean I remember a few years ago because like there was this one year where like Kaharski, I don't know, he had like I don't know if he had a drink with Amy or just Amy had a drink, whatever. I just remember there was some video, you know, they're sitting there and it's like I was like no one there, and now it's like just everyone in the world goes, oh God, these things. I tell you what,
you could be there. That could be what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I don't think I can. You can never say never on anything, but I've never been to an NFL owners meeting and may never get there. And I tell you, it looks fantastic. I will say I'll be very sad if there isn't at least video of Jordan Schultz and Kaharski having their confrontation.
Yep.
Between all the media, we should be able to get video.
There should be a pretty. I mean, maybe even some audio tossed in there too. Be great.
Yeah, exactly.
615-737-1025. Our phone number 615-737-1025. More reaction to Brian Callahan, Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker, some comments from owners' meetings, including a decision that happened earlier this offseason that I think we all raised our eyebrows about that now has a little bit more clarity. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe, a news item to get to that's coming out of the Ryan Callahan availability. Kuharski and TD and Jim Wyatt and others putting this out there. Traylon Burks, not likely to be ready for training camp, but he might be ready for the start of the season. So there you go. That's probably going to be one of the few times we talk about Traylon Burks moving on from here forward, but there's your injury update. Likely not ready for camp, could be ready for the start of the season on the Traylon Burks front. So right now he's in the receiving room, Joe. So there you go.
All right. Well, there's that. And then I saw, Borgonzi, I guess this would have been yesterday, had some comments about Will Levis to the effect of, trade him? Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah. Saying he's in the building and he's working hard. And so I don't know. Will Levis to Traylon Burks. The connection continues in 2025.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm sure if he is able to get out there for camp, it could be electric in camp by the time that thing comes around. So, we brought up some work that Paul Kuharski did. You can go check out some of his conversations with Borgonzi and Brinker and Callahan. Really interesting stuff on the Dan Moore front at paulkuharski.com as well. One thing that also came up, Joe, was what happened with Nick Westbrook-Akine, who is now a member of the Miami Dolphins. And here was a quote from Chad Brinker that Paul Kuharski threw out there. Quote, "He was on our radar. We made an offer to him. We were trying to bring him back. We wanted him to be part of our team. As you know, that's the risk you take when it gets to free agency. Other teams get involved. There are other opportunities maybe players want to look at. And in that case, it just didn't work out." This was what Chad Brinker had to say on Nick Westbrook-Akine shaking loose and becoming the newest member of the Miami Dolphins. Joe, your thoughts?
Lies. You stew in that the rest of your career.
He might make you.
Brutal.
Who has more touchdowns this year for the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill or NWI?
That's a good question. I'm sure it'll be a heck of a. I mean, that 1-2 tandem. It'll probably be like, who's the MVP of the NFL? Which one of these guys?
Waddle, move aside. You're not catching as many passes this year, bub.
Yeah, Waddle. Waddle's a good NWI backup. Yeah,
just waddle your way to the sideline. NWI is coming on the field.
There you go. Tua finally has a weapon where we can see Tua's true talent shining through in the NFL. There you go. We'll miss you, Nick.
Also, Brian Callahan saying earlier this morning, Joe, that he believes that Bryce Oliver could fill that void left behind by NWI, which is not necessarily a new thought. We've talked about that and the idea of Bryce Oliver having an elevated role in the receiving room. I mean, as the room is currently constructed, Joe, there's not going to be any choice. He's going to have an elevated role. But what do you make of Callahan throwing that out there that he feels like Bryce Oliver could step in to that NWI role?
Yeah. So now to take it away from the NWI joking, which some people have listened to this show for years and never picked up on it. Yeah, that's fine. And that's so if Bryce Oliver can be your fourth or fifth receiver, good. So who's 2, 3, and 4-ish? That's my question.
Yeah.
There's nobody to fill those spots right now. 2, 3, and 4, maybe 2, 3. But again, I like Bryce Oliver. I think he could be a 4, but you're talking about 2 and 3, huge roles if you want this offense to have a chance. And I got no answers on either of them. I think one of them will be a draft pick, but what about the other one?
Yeah, look, I have no idea what Bryce Oliver is going to be. I mean, the guy has 6 catches for 95 yards in his career to this point. So, he's a young guy. They need more young guys in their receiving room. He's 24. So maybe he can get in a spot this year where he elevates and plays well. Like he made some plays for him in the preseason last year. Like Bryce Oliver, they may be really happy there. I don't think that it probably serves you all that well this year, Joe, to have Bryce Oliver on the field all that much. That's just my immediate takeaway on that thought.
I agree. And also, as I sit here today, I think we're going to see a fair amount of Bryce Oliver on the field.
We might see.
That's just going to be my guess.
So an interesting back and forth. TD put this video out there between him and Brian Callahan on the Cam Ward front. Callahan going through his process of kind of the draft and what that could look like in terms of the timeline of making a decision. TD asked him an interesting follow-up in the middle of this clip as well. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say.
Yeah, I get where that sentiment would come from, but I'll just say this again: like the one thing that Mike has preached this whole process is that we're going to go through it, and that means making sure we're doing our due diligence on all the players available, all the options available. I think that's the right way to go about it, is to make sure you're doing the right things by every player that's there for you and looking at all the options, and then when you make a decision and the decision's been made, then you move forward. But I think anytime that you just sit and you just pretend like there's nothing else out there, I don't think that's a disciplined approach. I don't think that you get a chance to look at the totality of the class. So I just think there's a part of doing the job the right way, and I think that's our approach. And again, once we make the decision, no matter what it is or who it is, we'll be thrilled to death. But I think the right thing to do is to do it the way we're doing it and make sure that you turn over all the rocks and you go through all the things you have to go through until you get to that point.
So you would say it's pretty accurate to say, like, even though you guys haven't said outright that's your guy, there's still, like, he still could be, like, that doesn't mean that you are out on him, so to speak.
Oh yeah, that has nothing to, I would say whatever we're doing has nothing to do with any specific player. We're just making sure we're doing our due diligence in the process, and when the time comes to make the decision, then we'll be ready and excited about whatever that is. So I wouldn't say it precludes anybody from being in it or that we're not excited about whatever the pick is going to be. I just think we're making sure that the process is done the right way.
So TD throwing it out there, just because you guys haven't outright said that Cam Ward's your guy doesn't mean that Cam Ward's not your guy, right? And an interesting response there from Callahan. What do you think of that, Joe?
Yeah, it's the right things to say, and it sounds like the right things to do. I agree with that idea. Yeah, it's March 31st, man. It's, the draft's more than 3 weeks away, so you go through everything. I understand, like, okay, a fan, I get it. You could be like, okay, well, you just had your private workout with him, another dinner with him, his pro day. You've had the combine. You already had the film for months. What's the due diligence? What else? Well, again, this week they have Shedeur Sanders. Do I think Shedeur Sanders is going to, do something at his pro day that's going to change the math? No, but I agree with what he's saying. I mean, it makes sense. And again, there's just no reason. There really is no reason to, to make some public declaration. And like you said, Robby, I mean, the NFL would discourage that anyway.
They would.
Let's make it as suspenseful as possible. Now, like last year, what happened? Last year, did they, were they talking through this? Like, man, if Latham's there, really love him. And then Callahan was like, but Rand, what about like Brock Bowers? And Rand's like, hold on, I got to take a nap, and we'll get back to that. Okay. Just let me take a nap, and we'll see. And then they never talked about it. And then they didn't take Brock Bowers.
Guys, I've almost beaten this level of Candy Crush. Can you hold off just for another second? Hold on.
Is there actually a Candy Crush thing or no?
Kuharski said Candy Crush. Now, I don't think he was being literal, but that's what he said.
So, but
if you want the GM playing Candy Crush, you got your guy last time. That's what he said.
So is that like he's actually saying like he's like plays games on his phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
meanwhile,
Mike sounds like me napping and playing games on my phone.
Yeah, Mike Borgonzi doesn't even look at his phone unless it's a text from another GM family member. And it just everybody's blocked.
He's got
a
flip phone.
No apps. Yeah, no apps. Exactly. There you go. Just a flip phone. So there's no chance. All numbers blocked other than other GMs.
Remember the old Nextel back in like the early 2000s, the walkie-talkie? You got one of those.
Oh, we had those.
Yeah, he's got the walkie-talkie. It's just the only people that can contact him are the other GMs around the league.
Man, I love those phones. The Motorola flip phone with the Nextel, like Katie and I'd be at the mall. Hey, I'm over in over at the Crumble Cookie. Okay, I'll meet you over there in 5 minutes.
Need to bring those back. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. Max Hers will join us coming up next. They're doing a really cool thing tomorrow for an animated broadcast with the Nashville Predators. what I've always wanted to see, Max Hurst, Chris Mason in animated form. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Monday morning. Preds in action tonight, taking on the Philadelphia Flyers. They got Columbus coming up tomorrow, and Max Hurst, Chris Mason, going to be doing something really cool tomorrow. To help us talk more about that, let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Max Hurst to the program. Max, good morning. How are you?
Hi, guys. I'm great. Ready to get animated tomorrow on April Fool's Day, which has made it really hard to explain to people that this is something real and something that's actually happening in the real world. They're like, oh, you're becoming a cartoon? That's very believable. When is it? And say it's on April Fool's Day, and then they really don't believe me. But it's real. It's happening.
It is. It is very interesting timing from that standpoint. So for those who may be unfamiliar, tell us what's happening tomorrow and where people can find it as the Predators take on the Columbus Blue Jackets tomorrow night.
So 6 o'clock on Channel 5, Nashville CBS. It's Music City Hockey in Smashville, the Preds' first ever animated broadcast. It is going on simultaneously as the Preds play the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the entire game will be taking place in cartoon form. C. Mason and I will be your hosts. Nash will be your guide leading the scavenger hunt. And we have an entire animated version of Smashville. So it's Broadway, it's the Batman building, it's Bridgestone Arena, it's an outdoor hockey rink downtown, but it's tons of other Nashville landmarks brought together in this cartoon world as well. And the NHL and its partner companies have done an amazing job creating this cartoon land. It is simply unbelievable how detailed it is, how much fun we're going to have. And we are one of 4 teams that gets to do this on a local broadcast this year. So it's tomorrow night during the game at 6 o'clock on Channel 5. It'll go for the duration of the game, so it'll be about 3 hours. It is not viewable outside of Nashville live, but it will go on the NHL's YouTube page on Wednesday for anyone, kids, adults, whoever, to watch for the rest of time. And it's a broadcast designed for kids. We'll be talking a lot about the rules of hockey, about our players, and also about Nashville and Music City and what it means to be part of Smashville. So it'll be about the game. It'll have some elements where we're teaching you about the city and the team and our chants and all of that. It'll be a really fun mix. And most importantly, I think the energy from it is going to be contagious. And Mason and I will have a really fun time with it. So whether you join us for a minute of it or watch the whole thing, we think it's going to be a lot of fun. And for those of you down in Williamson County, there is also a watch party designed for kids at the factory at Franklin tomorrow night at 6.
Okay, pretend I'm dumb. So I know this is a huge stretch for you guys. So how does this? So is this is like you guys have done this, or how does this work in coordination with a live game happening?
No, it will be live. It will be live as the game happens. We have rehearsed a few things, and a few portions of it are pre-planned. And it's not like we're always going to be talking about the game as well. We're going to be bouncing around Smashville, but it will be 100% live. And Mason and I will be at the NHL studios in New York City with a couple of screens going on. We'll be able to see the real game. We'll be able to see the animated game. And we'll also have virtual reality headsets on, which will be how you see our characters. You'll see our faces and our arm and hand movements all coming from VR when you see our cartoon likenesses, which is awesome. And they can drop us anywhere in the cartoon world. They can put us on top of the Batman building. They can put us on Broadway rooftops. They can put us in the Ryman on stage at the Opry with the country star bobbleheads who are going to be a part of it. So they could drop us anywhere. But we will be watching and reacting to the game as it happens with tons of other fun stuff mixed in. And it is completely live, and a big staff from the NHL will be working on it with us. It's a true collaboration effort. The Preds provided the ideation and helped the NHL create this world. And from there, we're in their facility with their staff, making this a reality. And it's getting to see it is unbelievable. And I'm in New York right now. Mace and I will be in their studio today, going through a set day and seeing everything that they've produced for us finalized. And I can't wait to see it because it seems like there's a ton that they've done for us. It's incredible.
Well, they've done. We were talking about this the other day. They've done some similar things to this in the NFL, and it's been a very popular thing. So, like the technology to be able to do this in live time while the game's going on, and then also, as you said, I mean, you can bounce you and Mace around the different Nashville locations here. Like the technology's pretty awesome here that you're dealing with.
It's incredible. It's really, really incredible. And this is something that's going to become a norm, these alternate broadcast feeds. And we are one of the first local teams in any sport to be able to do this. And the NHL is the first league to open this up for local broadcasts. Previously, they've only been on national TV. So it's been a wild success when it happens, and people want more of it. And I think opening it up for it to just be a Preds broadcast is a major, major step for a league. The Bruins and Lightning have done it within the last couple of weeks. The Flames will be the last team to do it this year, coming up at some point within the next week or two between now and the end of the season. So 17 teams applied to get to do this year. We were one of a group of 4 that was chosen and made it to the finish line. So it's a big honor for us, for the people at the Preds who worked on it. In our marketing department and in our broadcast department, people worked really, really hard on this. And also for our fans, it's kind of the same honor as being chosen for an outdoor game or to go back for more games in Europe this year. It's because the NHL loves what the Preds do. They love the motif for the broadcast with Music City Hockey, and they know that our fans will appreciate it. So it's a tribute to our fan base, and it's something fun to put at the end of the season here.
Well, Max, we're looking forward to it. Coming up tomorrow on News Channel 5 at 6 o'clock. Going to be a lot of fun, and appreciate you taking time to be with us today here on the program.
Yeah, guys, my pleasure. And anybody with questions about it, feel free to tweet at me, or even if you're watching, if your kids are watching, tweet at us. Let us know who's watching. We'll try and look at it, give you a shout out, and if nothing else, say thank you after.
Yep, no doubt about that. Max Hers, our guest. You can check it out tomorrow, News Channel 5 at 6 o'clock. Predators taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Will have the animated broadcast on that front. So Joe's world's going to be blown up tomorrow night. Just watching this, some cartoon Max Hers and Chris Mason. It's gonna be fun.
Well, I saw the commercial. Is Max still there? Or
he's gone.
Yeah, I saw the commercial, and it looks like Simpsons animation to me.
Yeah,
I don't know I don't know if that's a thing, but they look like Simpsons characters, right?
Well, I think Max was taller than C Mace in the animation too, which was also fun. We were joking about that with him the other day. Because in real life, he is not taller than C Mace.
There's not that big of a difference, though, is there?
I mean, there's a pretty significant difference.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
That is funny. Good for you, Max.
I mean, C Mace isn't Hal Gill or anything, but yeah, he's good size.
Yeah. Guy. Yeah. Cartoon Max just towers over people. No wonder he likes this.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Corey Curtis from News 2 will be with us coming up at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
On Brugler, he actually has him fourth. He has him as a second round grade and number 30 overall. I mean, I think that's got to be largely about the injury. You're talking about a microdiscectomy. Ugh. By the way, I didn't even realize this. He also has had a torn ACL in the past and sciatica symptoms from lifting weights that required a different surgery. So 2 surgeries plus an ACL.
What was that last word?
Sciatica, and I may be totally butchering that, symptoms from lifting weights.
You probably
sciatica?
are.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, it's sciatica. Oh, my God, I'm an idiot.
One of the great moments in the history of this program. And, Joe, we're getting close to what's got to be the anniversary of that. This is draft time, talking about Caleb Farley. So probably approaching 4 years. Hard to believe.
The gift that keeps on giving, that one. Let me tell you something. Yeah.
But sciatica.
Oh, man, watch out for the sciatica and scurvy together. It's a I mean, talk about, yeah, you will really get farted up with that stuff. Okay.
You will.
So I just have decided to pivot here because I'm really enjoying all the stuff coming out of the owners meetings. There's just stuff flying around left and right. 2 things in particular. I guess 3. I just saw, Brian Callahan is talking about how L'Jarius Sneed is, going to be coming back strong and ready for camp, which brings me to, my question is like, okay, so ready to not participate in camp again? Is he going to be ready for, I thought he doesn't do camp.
Right.
Who cares if he's ready for camp, right? Like, will he play in football games this year? But a couple things that really stand out to me on the stupid front. One of them is apparently Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones splitting reps, baby.
Oh, God.
I mean, if you're Anthony Richardson, you're like, well, if I can just beat out Daniel Jones, this is now what this franchise thinks of me. They're going to give me a chance to compete with Daniel Jones and split reps with him. I mean, truly amazing. I need Indy Ben's spin on how this is a great thing. This is a culture of competition in Indy. That's what it is, by God. You earn your spot on that field. And then also Mike Vrabel. Now, this one is really interesting. Now, I don't know if people have been following along. I mean, I know it's like the Titans aren't really in the offensive tackle situation, so maybe you're not following as closely, but there's all this stuff. It's every year there's somebody. But Will Campbell of LSU is this year's like Skoronski, basically his short arms, right? So like everybody says, excuse me, that he's going to end up being a guard, right?
Yeah.
A guard. And Vrabel says today, Will Campbell, that guy's a left tackle, by golly. So does that mean that Vrabel has learned from the Skoronski situation, or is there anything to learn from the Skoronski situation? Would Skoronski be a good tackle? I don't know. I'm not saying they're the exact same prospect, but basically that's the knock. That's the reason that people saw Skoronski as a guard, and why a lot of people see Will Campbell as a guard. But Mike Vrabel now is a believer in short-armed tackles. Take that for whatever it's worth.
So he blaming the Skoronski pick on Rand now? Like, Rand was playing Candy Crush, and we told him to go do something else, but he just went up there and he picked Skoronski.
Rand, come here. Let's measure Peter's arms. Hold on, man. I gotta take a little snooze, okay? As you guys get back to me on that. Yeah, I don't know.
Is he trying to drum up a little trade value? I mean, nobody wants to trade up for a guard, so maybe a tackle.
Yeah, I
don't think anybody's going to trade up for a tackle in this year's draft either, but you never know.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's really interesting given what they did here. And again, I don't know that Skoronski. I haven't watched Skoronski and said, man, that guy should be a left tackle. When he moves his feet, that's not what I think. So don't get me wrong. I think people think because he hasn't been as good as hoped, he hasn't been Pro Bowl, All-Pro, superstar guard.
Yeah.
And because he played tackle, because he was a good tackle at Northwestern in college, well, that's why, because they moved him to the wrong. I don't watch him and think, oh, that guy should be a left tackle in this league. But hey, whatever. Yeah, I get it. If something doesn't work out, then go to the initial decision. But it is interesting that Vrabel thinks this of Will Campbell. And again, I'm not saying they're the exact same prospect, but that's the thing. And there are people who will tell you, if you don't have that arm extension against these top edge guys, like they'll gobble you up.
Joe, it's going to be
So
interesting to see where the tush push goes as they're kind of going through the rule proposals this week. That's a big topic of conversation. My beloved Green Bay Packers leading the charge on trying to get the tush push out of the NFL. Mike Tomlin was asked about it this morning. Diana Rossini put this quote out there, and Tomlin's response was, quote, "My perspective is the player safety component. He's open-minded." And there's some real consideration here about getting rid of the tush push. It's going to be very interesting to see where this goes.
Well, there was some reporting yesterday that it got heated in the room, in the competition committee room, which tells you that it's close. It's got to be close, which is surprising. I didn't think it would get that much support, but obviously it has that kind of support. So, we've gone back and forth. I mean, I guess I have finally settled on. I slightly favor getting rid of it. I mean, the player safety thing, it does seem to me like wild that we haven't had more injuries with that thing, but also it just seems wrong that you can do that. At the same time, it does seem also like you're just penalizing one team for dominating with something they came up with and used to their advantage. And I hate that, I hate that it seems like it's basically everybody pointing at the Super Bowl champion and saying, you got to stop doing that thing.
Yeah, it was interesting.
But I think it should be toast.
Did you see what Sirianni said the other day about it? He was talking about it, and he brought up Jonathan Gannon in Arizona, Steichen in Indy, and Kellen Moore. He says, "We'll see how it goes. All I'll say about it is Gannon, Steichen, and Moore better vote for it. They're in the head coaching position they're in right now because of that play. So all three, I better have those votes right there." So Sirianni said about some votes on his side there. These guys wouldn't even approach being head coaches if it wasn't for the tush push.
Yeah, the tush push. Yeah, I mean, the city of Philadelphia might be shut down right now if not for the tush push. The whole Rocky franchise. Yeah. Like, what? Yeah, calm down, buddy.
John Tortorella would still have his job if you got rid of the tush push.
That sounds like that was an interesting situation, by the way.
Yes, it does. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. We'll be joined by Corey Curtis from News 2. Coming up next, we'll get his reaction to some of the comments coming out of the NFL owners meetings down in Florida. His thoughts on all things Titans as well. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you. And as we do every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Corey Curtis from News 2, brought to you by Tennessee Men's Clinic. Corey, good morning. How are you?
I am delightful, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning. The NFL owners meetings going on, and Brian Callahan with some newsworthy items this morning. I want to get your thoughts on this first. We talked about NWI being let go by the Titans, and that they view Bryce Oliver as a potential replacement there. What do you make of that idea of Bryce Oliver maybe getting some more playing time this year out there for the Titans?
You know, Bryce Oliver had a great camp last year. I mean, he really did. I mean, he made plays regularly on the practice field. Now, there's a difference between making plays in the practice field and on the game field. So he's going to have to be able to transition with that. You know, he's a guy who put up ridiculous numbers at Youngstown State, but he is a big, strong guy with really large hands. And, you know, he's a guy that I'm excited to see more of this year, but I don't know how much you can, I don't know how much you can expect. Like what's the expectation? You know, do you think, are they expecting to get 600 yards from him? Are they expecting to get 800 yards from him? You know, I think that's a danger with an unproven, you know, player is what's your expectation and how big of a role is he going to fill when he's, in fact, never done that before.
So also, of course, Corey, lots of questions around, you know, the basically why not save Cam Ward's your guy if he's your guy. You know, basically the Titans' approach to the whole thing. And of course, you know, Brian Callahan talking about Mike Borgonzi's disciplined approach. I guess to me, it's like, it's there's no reason to really be out there, you know, unless it's, there's really no reason to be out there, you know, unless it's like you just want to end the drama and all that. But what do you buy that there's still, you know, actual evaluating going on, that they really aren't decided behind closed doors, and that they're really like in 2 weeks they'll finally come to, okay, what's our decision? Like, do you buy that?
Well, I think number one, it's not Brian Callahan's job. It's Mike Borgonzi's job. It's Chad Brinker's job. You know, Brian Callahan's job is largely to coach the team. You know, does he have input on the ability of these guys? Yes. But, you know, he should not be the one saying, you know, hey, Bryce is our guy, or, you know, we're doing this or we're doing that. You know, because that's not his job. That's not his role. So I don't think that should be coming from him, you know, number one. You know, look, you have to go through the process, and, you know, you can love Cam Ward and be thinking right now, yeah, we're probably taking Cam Ward. But I do agree, you have to go through all the scenarios, because what happens if, where are the Saints pick, like 8, 9?
Like they're 9th, yep.
Yeah. What happens if all of a sudden the Saints come up to you and say, we're going to give you our next 3 number 1s and this year's number 2 as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Now that it's interesting you bring that up, because, you know, we were going over a piece that Kuharski put out over the weekend, where he basically caught up with Borgonzi, and Callahan was involved in this too. And their thought was, like, if you love the quarterback, like if you think there's a franchise quarterback, the quote that Callahan used was, well, there's not really a price for that. So it is interesting. Like, to me, and I've kind of approached it this way. Like, to me, if they love Cam Ward, then I don't really care what anybody else offers. The question is, do they love Cam Ward? I mean, that's a question that I can't answer. But if they do, then I'm not trading.
No, because if it's a franchise quarterback, I mean, look, there's a reason teams trade, you know, 2 and 3 first-round picks to get that guy, because they're that valuable. You know, as we talk about the number of Super Bowls that have been won with, you know, we can count them, you know, Joe Flacco, Trent Dilfer and Nick Folk. You know, that's it. The rest are by dudes. Okay. And so, you know, you've got to have a guy, you know, back there. You know, we can just go back to last year with the Titans. You know, how many games did the Titans win last year with competent quarterback play? Just an NFL competent level of quarterback play. They go from 3 to like 7, right?
I was going to say they at least double up.
Yeah. And so that you know, look, offensive line, extremely valuable. Defensive line, extremely valuable. Playmakers on the outside, extremely valuable. It's easier to find those guys. Ask the Chicago Bears. Okay? You can find those other guys. Finding the guy to pull the trigger is not the easiest thing. And there's no guarantees. Because if there were guarantees, you know, Trevor Lawrence would be a top 5 quarterback. You know, he was everything coming out. And, you know, he has not been. I mean, he has not been terrible, but he's just been okay. But, you know, Floyd Reese used to always say that. He used to always say, even if you have a franchise quarterback, if you're picking and you view a guy as a franchise quarterback on the board, you have to take him, you know, because those guys are that valuable. So I completely agree with that notion. If you love this guy and you are convinced he is the future of your franchise, 199%, then there really is not a trade that gets you off that pick.
Yeah, I mean, I have my doubts that that's really how they feel, but yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with it. But see, what Floyd is talking about is the evaluation of the quarterback is so good you can't not do it even though you don't need it. The problem is that so many teams are, well, God, we do need it, and it is so important. So let me put on my quarterback goggles for this guy, you know, and all of a sudden he more and more starts to look like that guy. That's what, as a Titans fan, you just really hope is not happening here.
Yeah, and look, I mean, if you're Brian Callahan, you really want a quarterback. I mean, you want to save your job. And so it would be easy to put on, you know, those quarterback goggles. And also, it's the first pick goggles. You know, you shouldn't be picking first again. And if you are, it's somebody else doing all of it. So, you know, you've got to get it right. And look, to me, it would be terrifying to be sitting here with this pick and saying, you know, we like this guy, but we're going to pass. And then still needing a quarterback and coming back the next year, and all of a sudden, you know, you're picking 7th and there's 2 really good ones and neither team's willing to trade on the top 2 spots. And suddenly, you know, you're stuck without a quarterback still. And Cam Ward is doing Jaden Daniels stuff. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're just stuck in this. And, you know, you're right. You can't pick out of the what ifs and the fears. You have to pick on the evaluation, and you have to trust your evaluation. It's why these guys get the big dollars, and it's why their jobs are so volatile.
Corey, last thing for you here. Tennessee's run comes to an end yesterday against Houston. You know, obviously you score 15 in the first half, and you're just not going to give yourself a chance there in the second half. So what did you make of the run for Tennessee and kind of where things go from here with Rick Barnes and company?
Well, I think I said on this show, it's going to come down to 3 guys and 2 of them producing in every game. You know, it was Gainey, Lanier, and Milicic, and they needed at least 30 from 2 of those guys in every game. And, you know, Lanier was really good the first 3 games. I think he averaged 22 points a game the first 3 games, and they went 0 for 14 on their first 14 3-point field goals. NCAA all-time record for futility in the first half of an Elite 8 game. Generally, you don't win a game in the first half, but you can certainly lose it. And against a team like Houston and the way they play defense, there's no way they were going to come back from that deficit in that short amount of time. Look, it was a good team, you know, with some really, you know, Ziegler and Meshack, you know, those guys have won, you know, a ton of games, but they run into what a lot of Tennessee teams have run into. And that's when you get this far, you play a really good team, and you can't afford an offensive clunker. And inevitably, that offensive clunker seems to get them every year, whether it be in round 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's why I still view last year as the year they needed to make it happen with Connect, because he was that guy who could always go get them a basket. And, the other hard part about the loss this year now is looking at next year. They need a lot of pieces. You lose a Ziegler and a Meshack and a Lanier, and they've got a lot to replace.
They certainly do. Corey, great stuff as always, my friend. Thanks for taking time to be with us this morning.
You're blessed. I understand that.
We really are. Each Monday morning, we are blessed.
Hashtag blessed.
Hashtag blessed. That's right. Corey Curtis joins us.
By the way, because I'm going to get you off track here. You remember? Okay, you remember the old Blues Brothers with Belushi and Aykroyd?
Of course.
I do.
Well, they had the song, and at some point in that song, Aykroyd goes, "Rubber, what do you want for nothing? Rubber biscuit?" And I think of that every time I hear Joe and another biscuit.
We took that off for I think 2 shows one time, and people lost their mind. I guess it was one show.
Oh, yeah. I was one of them. I was like, this show sucks now. Get this back.
We got our
little
mojo
kids
back.
really love that on their way to school.
Yeah, it's a very kid-friendly program that we've got.
All right, throw me off.
We're not farting around here.
That's right. Corey Curtis from News 2 joins us every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, brought to you by Tennessee Men's Clinic. We'll react to what Corey had to say. We'll take your thoughts on the Vols, their elimination in the Elite Eight yesterday against Houston. Coming up next, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. It's time for the 4th annual 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament. Cromwell Media, along with partners Fox 17, Outfront Media, and Social Indoor, are proud to announce we'll be back at Hermitage Golf Course on Thursday, May 29th to make a difference while having a great time. You can join us and a few guest media members, athletes, musicians, as we raise money for Folds of Honor. Donations will go to provide life-changing scholarships to families of America's fallen or disabled military and first responders. You can sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe, the run comes to an end yesterday for the Vols. They fall 69-50 in the Elite Eight to Houston. So after what was, I think, as we would both agree, the biggest win in program history Friday night, you advance to just your 3rd Elite Eight in program history. You take down your rival to do it in Kentucky, and you dominated the entire game on Friday. You followed up with a 15-point first half yesterday, Joe, against a really good Houston team. And when you shoot that poorly in the first half and you come up with 15 on the scoreboard, you're just not going to give yourself a chance in the second half there. So Tennessee's run comes to an end, and we got 4 of the big dogs left in the tournament, Joe, in the Final Four, all 4 number 1 seeds.
Yes, so that goes along with, well, look, there's a lot of people who are upset about this tournament and, no Cinderella. It's very chalk. I will say, we complain about the NCAA selection committee. Seems like they did a pretty good job there of seeding the tournament. And, those the teams, the 4 teams that are there, been the top 4, especially as Houston has kind of emerged, like in January and February in that Big 12. I mean, they're the best 4 teams. But it's disappointing for the Vols to play the way they did. You have to give Houston credit for it. It's always hard to totally quantify when a team is just missing every shot, is it like how much of it is just that's it? You're missing shots, or how much is it like the other team's defense has disrupted you? I think Houston gets a ton of credit. It's the best defense in the sport. They are the number 1 defense. Now Tennessee technically came in number 3, St. John's number 2 in efficiency, but they're unbelievable defensively. And I think the Vols rush some shots, and then you get into things can snowball either way with shooting with a team. That happens. And they just couldn't get in the lane. They couldn't get in the lane. They couldn't move that defense. They couldn't get them out of position. They couldn't get driving lanes. And then they're taking these early, decent shots. I mean, some of them were like, okay, that's not a bad shot against that defense. And they just couldn't hit anything. I liked the fight in the second half. They had a few chances to, if you get that down to 6-7 points, I think it was down 10. And I think Gainey had a layup and he just missed the layup, and then it's a 3 the other way. So you're about to turn it to 8. There was also a 3-point play, it looked like, on Meshack, but then they wiped off. He missed both free throws. They had some moments in the second half. They fought really hard, as you would expect. But that was a game that was won in the first half. I think you can win and lose games in the first half. If you have a 5 or 10 minute total domination stretch where it's like a 20-point difference between the teams, yeah, that can be the game-winning stretch, and that's when Houston won the game.
Yeah, they did. And, Tennessee kept at it. They kept going in the second half, but just too much of a deficit to overcome. Obviously, Joe, some frustration from Vols fans after that. You feel like maybe this is the team that finally breaks down the door, gets to the first Final Four in program history, and not able to do it. So if you're a Tennessee fan and you're in the aftermath of another loss in the Elite Eight, on one hand, you're recognizing that it's just the 3rd time in program history that you've made it that far in the Elite Eight, the 2nd time under Rick Barnes, and yet you're still coming up short and not punching the ticket to the Final Four. So with guys like Ziegler and Meshack and how important they were to this team, how do you view the aftermath of that if you're a Tennessee fan in terms of the accomplishments that those guys in this program has had while still not getting to the Final Four, and I think fairly wondering where things go from here with such big losses on the horizon?
Yeah, it's tough because I did think that this team was going to be the one to do it. Not that it's his best team. It's not, So we talked earlier in the show about a comment like, if this team can't make it, then what team will? Well, he's had better teams than this. The tournament's about matchups. I still feel like, Houston was a better 1 seed to draw than Florida or Duke. I mean, Tennessee, but of course, Tennessee did blow out Florida one time. So I guess maybe I was wrong on that. Florida has not looked as dominant as I thought they would in this tournament. They're still in the Final Four, but they've had to have a couple crazy saves. For Tennessee, it's tough because you're losing just the heart and soul of the program, and it's Ziegler, but it's also Meshack. You just with those two guys, just leaders, incredible defenders. Ziegler is, I mean, he's the all-time assist leader in SEC, history. I mean, he's just been an amazing player. And so you are just starting over, really. Yes, you got definitely a couple. I know one really good recruit coming in. You're going to get a JP Estrella back next year. You got some other guys, with eligibility, but you're going to have to rebuild the guts of this team quickly in the portal. And I think Rick Barnes did a great job the last 2 years to get a score. Obviously, Dalton Connect, incredible job there. No one knew what they had in him until we started watching him play. And then Chaz Lanier ends up being a really good player for them. I mean, he's a big part of why they were playing the Elite Eight. But I think that this year's team, the front court really took a hit. And in some matchups, it's just too much to overcome. I mean, Igor Milicic against, Juwan Roberts of Houston, it just doesn't work, man. And you got to have, that's where Juwan Roberts, what would have been a great matchup for him? Tobe Awaka. But unfortunately for Barnes, both of those guys left after last year. And that's what happens too, is I was shocked that Awaka left. Adu, apparently Arkansas, really went after him financially, all that stuff. But the front court was not good enough this year. And I think that was ultimately their downfall. So there's just so much to try to rebuild for next year.
We'll have more of your thoughts on Tennessee losing in the Elite Eight to Houston yesterday. Where do Rick Barnes and company go from here? Was that Tennessee's best shot to punch down the door and get to the Final Four? More on that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
This week's Nashville's Best Deal comes from Bad Axe Throwing Nashville, downtown's largest axe throwing venue and your go-to spot for food, fun, and vibes. Enjoy panoramic views of the city, a killer soundtrack, craft cocktails from the full bar, and a Northwoods-inspired menu with a Southern twist. This week, score half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals to grab yours now. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Coming to your thoughts on the Vols and their elimination in the Elite Eight yesterday on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe, so where do they go from here? That's the question. Like, if you feel like that was their best shot, or the last 2 years have been their best shot to break down the door for the Final Four. Number one, is that true? And number two, if you're Tennessee and you're Rick Barnes and you're trying to replace some talent here, what's our confidence level that they're going to be able to do it? Here's where I fall on it. There's a lot that has to be replaced, obviously, right? You're talking about some very important players that have been here for a long time that are a big part of what they do. I think the track record shows you that Barnes and his staff have a pretty good eye for talent and have used the portal to their advantage. When you bring in Connect, you bring in Lanier this past year, they've been able to find some really impactful players in the portal. So I think they'll do that again. We'll see exactly who that is and how many that is next year, but I think they'll be able to do that again. And Joe, there's a long enough track record at this point with how good they've been, where I mean, they're probably going to put together a pretty good squad, and they'll be a team that's competitive in the SEC next year, and they'll be a team that's right up there, probably near the top based on the way the track record has gone. And then we'll see come tournament time here. I do think if you're a Tennessee fan, like I think sometimes the Rick Barnes discussion goes way too far in terms of, wow, that guy can never win the big one, and Tennessee basketball deserves better, going to get to the Final Four, go get that coach, all those things. I think some of those conversations get out of control. I do think it's fair to wonder if these last 2 years with the talent that they had, but also some of the people that they had that I think were really important in that culture there, was this their best shot? And can Barnes recover to the level where there will be a better shot moving forward here? I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, very fair question. I mean, look at the league he's in. You know, they've been at the top of the SEC for the past few years under Rick Barnes, which again that's just not normal for Tennessee, but that's what they've been. They've been, Auburn has had its ups and downs. Kentucky, really has dipped, right? I mean, this is the first time Kentucky got to the second weekend since 2019. Same with Auburn, by the way. And Alabama got to the Final Four for the first time last year, so they're right there. Tennessee and Alabama really have been the best two programs, but those four are all really good. But now you have Todd Golden in Florida and what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, again, Nate Oates isn't going anywhere, I don't think, and they're going to be what they are, which is still just a really good program. Bruce Pearl, I think he's got some time left before he intends to hand it over to Stephen Pearl, but all over the league. I mean, you got Sean Miller taking over at Texas. Got good coaches all through this league. It's gonna be very competitive. So you're right. We don't know. He's got a lot of work to do, and it's not going to be easy. One guy I forgot, Robby, who I think is key, and I will say I think this guy could be one of the next real core players when it comes to that locker room, and that is Cade Phillips.
Yep.
Cade Phillips is, and really I think the Cade Phillips JP Estrella combo, one or both, they need to be able to stretch the defense, space the floor, and shoot from outside. But I think they both have that skill if they can develop it. I think especially Cade. Here's a quote he had from Mike Wilson's story, the Knoxville News Sentinel, asked about Masek and Ziegler. He said, quote, "If they are remembered for anything short of being winners and elevating this program to a blue blood level, I don't know if you can consider yourself a fan of Tennessee," end quote. Now, I will take issue with blue blood. You got to go to Final Fours to probably win national titles, frankly, to be a blue blood.
Yes.
But top high status in the sport right now. Yeah. I mean, they've been one of the best programs, over the last several years, but he is one guy to keep in mind for that moving forward. And that's important. That's a huge part of their success. I mean, Rick Barnes has had just tremendous guys on his teams, and it's not an accident.
Got some tickets to give away to see Jacko Pierce at City Winery this Saturday night. Be caller 3-615-737-1025, our phone number. Joe, Ian Safar on the YouTube chat throwing this question out there. Do you think the Vols hyped up the Kentucky game too much and that led them to come out flat against Houston? What do you think of that?
Hello, Ian. I don't know. Did I hype it up to? I mean, they were obviously, I think sometimes you win a Sweet 16 game and it can drain you for the next one. Like, had they beat Kentucky with like a buzzer beater and it was like this just incredible, oh my God, what a win, like, all-time win type thing, I could buy that. I just think I don't think they came out flat versus Houston. I think Houston came out and punched him in the face and then punched him with the left and then hit him with an uppercut and said, we are bigger and stronger than you. You're not going to the lane. You're not getting open. You're not doing anything. Throw up some threes and see how that works for you. And the Vols, look, obviously they could have hit some of those threes, but when you're not in rhythm, you're not moving the ball side to side, you're taking early shots, you're playing into their hands. So I think Houston gets the credit first. I just don't think the Vols handled what Houston was doing to them well.
I got one text that says, not sure how Rick Barnes is to blame for that first half shooting percentage. Look, I get how this works. Number one, there's frustration after a loss anyway. You're going to see that from a big fan base. Saw some of that yesterday. I do think there is like this smaller contingent of Tennessee fans that are fed up with Rick Barnes. Now, I don't understand how you get there. Like, I understand you want to win a national championship and get to the Final Four. I don't think that's a very easy thing to do. And I think sometimes we lose a little bit of perspective on what this basketball program has been. So I understand all that kind of in the aftermath of the loss there. What's now interesting, specifically on the Barnes front, is how much longer does he want to keep doing this? And when that time comes, whether it's now, whether it's next year, 5 years from now, whatever it is, how attractive is this job in the meantime? Like, has he elevated this program to the point where whenever that next person comes in, whether it's somebody that's been on his staff, whether they open it up and go big game hunting as it relates to the next head coach, how attractive is the Tennessee job going to be? Really interested to see, like how Barnes at the age of 70 now approaches this moving forward.
Yeah, I'm keeping the door cracked on retirement. I'm not. I understand he kind of dunked on that the other day, but I mean, that still happens. You're not going to say anything at that point. And I'm not sitting here 100% convinced that, that he's not coming back. I do think that he probably would like to hand it off to one of his guys, whenever he does leave. Who exactly would that be? I don't know. But then, like you said, Robby, is an attractive job for, top outside candidates. I think it is. I mean, does Tennessee care about basketball now? Do the fans care? Is there investment in the program? Now you have a brand that, that has, because of Rick Barnes, you actually have a brand of basketball success that did not really exist there. So I do think that he's totally changed the job. And, it'll be very interesting whenever it happens. If there's a clear Rick Barnes coaching tree candidate, there are a lot of possibilities there. There's a lot of guys who are head coaches now, but I think it would have to be someone who really is excelling, in that moment. Or is Danny White going to go out there and do what he has done, which is he likes to go find coaches. He did a pretty good job with women's basketball a year ago.
So, by the way, they took Texas to the wire the other night on that front and almost punched their ticket to the Elite Eight. Came up just short in that one, but a good first year for Kim Caldwell for sure.
Yeah, that was they were right there in that game. Went real cold in the fourth quarter. Texas is really good, but no, very, very promising first year. The whole thing with Tennessee and the SEC, really, in basketball, revenue sharing, that means you have a cap of about $21 million right now. It'll go up, but our SEC teams going to end up having less for their basketball programs than Big East teams, than even like Atlantic 10 teams where again, there's just no football. There's less money, way less money overall, but again, the revenue share is a specific number. And if so, do we then go back to McDonald's bags and cash to make up the difference? Because I think that actually may be the case. I mean, it's absolutely idiotic to me that you're going to take the collectives or whatever. And again, you're going to try to like cap the market. We don't cap the coaches' salaries, right? Now, if you want to have a cap like on players, then fine. Then you have contracts and all that stuff. So if we get to that, then that's one thing. But right now, as it is, I don't see how you can restrict earnings. You're going to get killed in
Offensively,
court.
the name of the game is scoring points.
Hey, that guy's not looking for a cap.
No, he's not looking for a cap on how much money he's trying to get from the NCAA. The problem, someone made this point on Pruitt. He's trying to basically say that they've like screwed him over in terms of like ever making money in his career, right? Because of all that stuff.
It was tracking that way for sure on the field.
Exactly. But also, have you noticed like Bruce Pearl is sitting here, like, lighting up the world after what happened to him? Like, if you're a good coach, you'll be fine. In college sports, if you're a good coach, you screw something up like this, you'll be fine. If you're a crappy coach, then, you sue the NCAA.
Asparagus? What's that? I don't know what that is.
I can assure you that the gap is closing.
It's time for Pred's Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode. Be the first caller at 615-737-1025, our phone number. If you guess a goal scorer for the Predators in the game tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. We'll do that coming up next. Wrap up the show with some NFL thoughts from the owners' meetings down there, including an interesting report regarding a quarterback that's still out there. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode. Preds in action tonight, taking on the Philadelphia Flyers. Puck drop at 6 o'clock. I'll have your pregame tonight at 5 o'clock. Here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. No change in the standings last time out. Rexrode leading the competition, and in very near fashion could be wrapping up the win in the competition. 15 correct answers. The listeners have 11. I remain at 7. Keyser remains at 4. With that in mind, let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Caleb to the program. Caleb, good morning. Thank you for calling in. Who is your pick to click for the Nashville Predators?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to take Forsberg tonight as, part of a pain in the back as it's been watching them play. My sciatica's still been acting up on me, and hopefully Forsberg can help me out on that.
Yep, could provide some relief on that front tonight. Caleb, thank you for the call. Forsberg, the selection. Rexrode, you're up first today. Your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
Man, that's Sciatica. It's a Sciatica day. It's today National Sciatica Day. We had National Joe Day last week. I'll go Stamkos.
Going with Steven Stamkos. Give me the kid. I'll go Svechkov tonight. I'll take Fedor Svechkov to score. Forsberg, Stamkos, Svechkov off the board. Keyser. So we'll see if he gets it tonight. Preds in action tonight. We had Max Hers on earlier. They'll have the animated broadcast coming up tomorrow as they take on Columbus. Got Dallas on Thursday. Joe, we're getting close to the end here. We'll have a lot more to say on the Predators front this week because we're a couple weeks away from some big decisions that are going to have to be made on the Predators front. We'll get into that a little bit later this week here on the program. Joe, some interesting reporting going on from the NFL owners meetings. We talked about some Titans stuff earlier in the show. If you missed that, go check out Robby and Rexrode wherever you get your podcast. But Mike Garafolo putting it out there that while the Steelers are still waiting on Aaron Rodgers to make a decision, apparently Rodgers and DK Metcalf had a throwing session over the weekend. So Rodgers is throwing with Metcalf, and all signs continue to point to him at some point, I guess, being the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers if he ever actually, signs there.
Well, I'm intrigued by that. I'm definitely intrigued by Rodgers at that place with that franchise with Mike Tomlin as the head coach. I feel like some of his BS may be muted a little bit. Does that make him play better? Does that mean that he can elevate a pretty good team to like a team that could actually win a playoff game or something? I don't know. They have some work to do too. They have to have a really good draft. I feel like they're eroding a little bit on defense, but I feel like if there's a place that could, I guess for lack of a better term, get him in line, maybe that would be the place.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, there are some mountains over there. Find some caves. Maybe all in the off days you can just go relax a little bit. Didn't have a whole lot of those in New Jersey.
Some old coal mines, man.
Yeah.
Really get yourself a little soot and a little hallucinogen combo.
I mean, the DK Metcalf George Pickens combo is pretty intriguing. I mean, first off, Pickens kind of a loose cannon anyway, so we'll see what that looks like. Particularly like he and Rodgers are together. I could see that being a little problematic at some point, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But I mean, from a talent perspective, you could do a whole lot worse if you're him than throwing to Metcalf and Pickens out there.
No question. No, you have to be intrigued by that. And you still, you have obviously quarterbacks like to have a running game and a defense. You have that. Now, I think the defense again, like they've got some work to do. That it wasn't, they've lost a little bit of steam over there. But if you look at the Steelers, I mean, really, like when they looked good last year, they won some close games with Justin Fields at quarterback. But when they looked pretty good, like a legit team for a while, when Russ was playing really well, right? Like there was a little stretch there. It's like, oh wow, okay, Russ looks good, and they look good, and then the Russ turned into a little bit of a pumpkin at the end of the year. It's just, it's hard for me to know like what Rodgers would be he just hasn't been in a good situation. He tears the Achilles, and then last year, that's obviously a dysfunctional organization. He contributed to the dysfunction, off the field. But how good is he? If you give him, like you said, those two good receivers, how good is he still? I mean, I'm intrigued to find out.
Well,
I hope this happens.
Looks like we might find out. We're going to have Charles Robinson with us on the show tomorrow, switching some things around this week. So Charles will be with us tomorrow on the program. We'll get into all things NFL with him. That does it for us today. Chasing Big Joe is up next. You're listening to 102.